The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather divisions. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. Father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I have come to set the earth on fire. I have come to set the earth on fire. That's what Jesus says in the gospel today. Set the earth on fire. What could he be talking about? What does all that mean, setting the earth on fire? If we go to the Greek, which is the language Luke wrote the gospel in, what we translate as earth, the Greek word is gi. Gi. Gi does not mean the world. It's not what it means. It means the ground, earth, dirt. That's what it means. If we go to the Aramaic, which is the language Jesus spoke, the Aramaic word for earth is ara. It has the same meaning. Again, it's not setting the world on fire. Is setting the ground on fire. Scholars say that very likely what Jesus is referring to are the earthen ovens that each village had. They were made out of dirt, and they were used for cooking. And how they set them on fire to do the cooking, they take a slab of salt and put that into the bottom of the oven. And then they would take camel dung or donkey dung, mix it with salt. These are earthy people. Camel dung or donkey dung. Okay, so we mix it with salt. Then we take it and we put it in the oven on top of that slab of salt and light it. And what happens is it comes alive. It begins to sparkle, begins to shoot flames out of the openings in the oven. It's very dynamic. It's like watching fireworks go off. And scholars say that's very likely what Jesus is talking about. When he's talking about setting the earth on fire, he's talking about dirt. He's talking about the earth ovens, the ground made out of dirt. That's what he's likely talking about. And what he's saying is he wants his followers to be like that earthen oven and explode with love and dazzle with enthusiasm. Sort of wake up, be different, come alive with our faith. That's what Jesus is calling his followers to do. In the gospel, he goes on to say what kind of impact that's liable to have, that it will even split up households. In Jewish culture, basically, the father determined what happened in the household. With the faith or the behavior, whatever the father wanted, that's what the family did. And they would follow his lead. Jesus is saying that's not how this works with faith. Each person has their own experience of faith, a call to faith by the Spirit, and that we as individuals have an opportunity to live that out in a dynamic way, in a real way, not just following the parents' lead, but being on our own, husband and wife, being different from one another, the daughters and sons, and how the family is functioning is no longer to be oppressed by this domination by the father figure, but each person is an individual. Each person is free to follow Jesus and not just do what the head of the household says. It really is amazing considering that Luke includes women in this gospel. Luke is probably the biggest proponent of the rights of women of the four evangelists. And this is another example where he includes the issue of women, mothers, daughters, stepmothers, stepdaughters. That's very unusual for them to talk like that, because under the law, the women had no rights. Under the law, the women were nobodies, and they had no rights, and they were basically owned by their father or their husband. And for him to say that, you follow me, begin dazzling like the fire coming out of an earth oven, and you can have your own thoughts, you can have your own beliefs, you can follow Jesus even when your husband or father don't agree with that. And same thing with sons. And so it's an opportunity for us to be free, to be called by the Spirit into a new way of living. Dazzling with faith, dazzling like an earth oven as it's set afire. In the first reading, we have the story of Jeremiah, in which he is taken prisoner by some people who don't like what he's preaching. Jeremiah was a very dynamic prophet. But people hated him because they didn't like his message. The kings didn't like his message. A lot of the people didn't like his message. It's a scene in the book of Jeremiah where Jeremiah is wandering through the streets of Jerusalem in the dark, screaming, telling people to convert to the Lord. Give your hearts back to Yahweh. Start following the law and stop following these pagan gods. He's calling them to conversion. And he's warning them that if you don't, bad things are going to happen to you. Well, people don't listen to that. The problem for Jeremiah is that it puts him in danger with the people in the area. And so in this instance, in this story, we hear about him being taken captive and put down in a cistern. They lower him down into this big hole. There's no water in it, though, but it's full of mud. And the author is talking about how Jeremiah sinks into the mud. You can just feel that. There is a cistern in the old city of Jerusalem in the ruins of the house of Caiaphas, where you can go down into the cellar area of his former house. Down there is one of these cisterns. And they've changed it so they put stairs in so you can go down and stand there and see what it was like to be lowered into that. It's a long way to the bottom. You can stand there and look up at the sky to the light and experience what that was like. The tradition is that that's where Jesus ended up after the Garden of Gethsemane, that the soldiers brought him to Caiaphas' house up a stairway that's still there. And that he was put in a cistern as a prisoner until he could be taken to the Sanhedrin in the morning. So that's a tradition. So Jeremiah is experiencing the same thing. Luckily, people intervene for him and say, we have to get him out of there. He's going to die in there, and he doesn't deserve that. And so they drag him out and set him free. But Jeremiah is seen as a person that was dazzled with faith, dazzled with following the call of Yahweh and serving as a prophet to the people. We also have in the second reading in the book of Hebrew, in the letter to the Hebrews, that the author talks about that we are being surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. These are clouds of witnesses. Christianity has been going on for over 2,000 years. We have billions of witnesses who have lived this faith through the centuries, lived it faithfully, and followed the call of Jesus. And so we're called to join that cloud of witnesses. Under Jewish law, anything that was important and to be believed had to have two witnesses. The law said if you have three, that's even better. And so we're called then to be part of that cloud of witnesses, people who live out our faith in a very dynamic way. That we can find ourselves sometimes sort of settled into a routine. It's all sort of boring, not much life in how we live our faith. We just go through the motions and the routine is a habit. But we're called in this gospel then to come alive as the earth would explode with fire out of this earth oven. So we're called to be the same. The whole idea of the earth oven is reminiscent of Adam. Adam, he's called the mud man, who was created out of the mud. And just as this earth oven dazzles with fire when it's lit, so Adam, the earth man, came to life. The Spirit breathed life into him, and he became a human being. And so we're called to be people who are filled with life and look for new ways to live out our faith. Might be new ways to pray, different activities we involved in, be involved in different ways in our lives so that our faith comes alive. It's something challenging for us. St. Ignatius of Loyola taught that one way of experiencing the scriptures, for example, is to use our imagination and put ourselves in the scene. Like in this gospel today, you would put yourself in the scene with your imagination. What would it be like? What does that look like? How would Jesus look? How would the people around you look? What would the smell be like in a village? They're burning dung in the mud, in the dirt ovens. What did that smell like? And how are the people reacting to what Jesus is saying? Because in that way, the scriptures then come alive. They're just not dead words on a page. They come alive with the Spirit in our imagination, using our imagination to allow the Spirit to guide us into new understanding and to make it more personal. There's a whole level of tension and fear throughout the Gospels that if you just read it and you get to the end and say, oh, ho hum, that's sort of boring, you don't appreciate how scary this was, how different it was. Jesus would say things that would frighten people. He'd say things that were totally different from what they'd been taught. And then people would be anxious about that, or they wouldn't believe him, or they'd be angry, have all kinds of feelings. So it's a very dynamic scene in these Gospels. It's just not written word on a piece of paper, but it really is describing not only something that happened at the time of Jesus, but happens for us each day. We too can feel anxious. We too can feel sad. We can feel overcome or overwhelmed by things going in our lives. We were called to have a faith that's dynamic, just as the earth oven would shoot fire out and sparkle as it was lit. So we too are to follow that image, according to Jesus, to follow that image and to be like that, have our faith just sparkle because it comes alive and brings us to the Lord.